Welcome to Meet the Musician, a series in which I asked 5 independent musicians a load of questions to dive into their musical journey. What motivates them, inspires them, what is their process, why do they even do this, and what does success look like? In today's episode, we're going to hear from Josh Riggs, who is the riff lord, riff master, shred ometer, songwriter, mixer, everything. Super talented, basically, from his solo act, Empires of Light, and other projects such as Alicia. So grab a drink, a comfy chair, and let's settle back and hear from Mr. Riggs himself. All right, cool. So Josh, great to have you with us today. So let's kick things off from the start. Tell us all about you. Obviously within the remit of music. Tell us about you, who you are, what you do.
Oh gosh. So my name's Josh. I live in Portland, Oregon, US. I am currently part of 2 projects. So like my solo project is called Empires of Light. And then I'm in a band called Elcia, ELCIA.
I suppose when you think about where you are today musically, what you do today musically, your skills, your competence, I suppose, to a degree, and all the journey that's taken you there, what would you say are the sort of key touch points over the last however many years that have kind of led you to where you are?
You think I have competence? That's funny.
I do.
So gosh, I picked up guitar when I was in high school, which would have been like the mid and late 90s. Actually, no, I got my first guitar when I was in 8th grade. I remember that. My parents said they were going to buy me one, and then I got in trouble for something, like, I don't know, mouthing off or something. And then they decided not, that was my punishment, was that I did not get the guitar. But yeah, I started playing guitar, taking lessons in the mid and late 90s, and Metallica was my jam. I wanted to be James Hetfield. I tried learning Metallica solos, like Kirk Hammett solos. I was like, I can't, this doesn't make sense to me. So I was always more into the rhythm guitar and riffs and stuff versus learning all the solos. Mostly I think just product of the time. We didn't have YouTube to be able to slow things down. It was tab, and I just cannot look at a guitar solo tab and be like, okay, this is how you do it. So I did that. And then when I was in college, which is the early 2000s, I got this idea that I wanted to not do the whole corporate thing after I graduated, and I started a band, and it was kind of radio metal. The band was called Black Star Morning. And it was me and the singer formed it together, and he played guitar, I played guitar, but I did most of the writing and composition. He wrote all the lyrics, and then we had a really great drummer. We had a bass player who if he showed up to practice, that was things were going well.
Yeah.
So we did this band for probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or so. And I remember finally towards the end of, before we broke up, finally realizing that his bass had a wiring problem, and nobody had been able to hear him play live at all for 5 years. And so that explains why we never had a good low end, and he was always playing the wrong thing anyway.
That's why I didn't need to come to practice, because no one was going to hear him anyway. So yeah,
that was cool. It was back in it was that weird time after Napster, but before right at the beginning of social media, MySpace and super early Facebook, before Spotify and streaming and all that stuff. And so you bands were still trying to get record deals. Yeah. But labels were not just throwing out deals like they used to. I remember there were bands that had been, so I was in Orlando, Florida at the time, which you would think Orlando, backwoods or whatever, but it actually had a pretty big music scene in the late 90s into early 2000s, Matchbox 20, Creed, a lot of not bands that I like or anything, but there were a lot of bands that got signed out of that era. Because there was a big music conference that happened there every year called Florida Music Festival. So we were still trying to get a record label or a record deal. Still weren't able to do a lot of things yourself at that time without big money help. So we just kind of got to this point where we recorded an album that for the time sounded really good. I want to say we spent $10,000 on it, which included trading a $6,000 drum kit for
Wow.
studio time. And now when I listen back, I'm like, wow, we paid $10,000 for that. Holy cow. But we did this and we were trying to like do this thing. And then I personally just got burnt out. And that was about the time when my day job career started to go somewhere. And by go somewhere, I mean, I got my first job and I was no longer having to work at a music store selling guitars. And so I kind of hit this point where I just got burnt out. And I was like, you know what? I've been like trying to make music for somebody else for so long. I'm just tired of it. Like, it's not fun anymore. And that was like 2006-ish. And then from there, I was just like, not really interested in music. And spent like the next 10 years not really caring about music.
At all. So I've heard you say that before. So you didn't pick a guitar up and just have a play at home, or you just didn't record stuff?
I played a little bit of acoustic guitar. Like I tried to do like the singer-songwriter thing a little bit and just like, I don't know, learn like old like classic country music songs. I was never really into acoustic guitar, so I guess that kind of explains why I never really went anywhere with that. I started doing photography, and that was kind of like my landscape photography was kind of my thing. And I got into that really pretty deep. And it's kind of funny, like I started getting involved with other communities on Instagram and other photographers, and had an Instagram account, and started to get like caught up in the whole thing of like getting as many likes as you can and getting features and all that stuff. And then you're starting to see a pattern here. I got so into it, and then I just got kind of burnt out. And then that was about 2017.
Right.
And I remember I was just like, you know what, I was at the point where like I was planning like every vacation like based on like sunrise and sunset timings.
Yeah,
and, like,
I've been there.
Yeah. And it's a lot. Like,
yeah, when you first get to your hotel and the first thing you do is get your sunset app out and try and work out where the sun's going to set, and can I get a good shot from the balcony or whatever? It's a problem.
And then like you spend a whole bunch of time hiking to where you're supposed to go, and then like the clouds scroll in at the last minute and you get nothing, and it's like, I put in all this work for nothing.
Yeah. Did you feel like you have an inherent need really to be creative, to do something creatively, and photography almost replaced music for a while?
I've heard a lot of people say like, I have to have a thing to express myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it's never really felt like I have these feelings that I have to express in art some way. It's more like, I got to do something. Like I need something to do. Like with photography, one of the things that I actually really enjoy was just like sitting there in Lightroom and twiddling with things and like editing stuff and like, what happens if I try this? What happens if I try this? What happens if I try this? And I find that now with music, one of the things that I really like is, just opening up a plugin or, hardware or whatever, and just like tweaking things and saying, what happens if I try this? I've been trying to work on a drum template for, I don't know, the last year or so. And I've made like probably 5 or 6 different versions. And each time I'm like, oh, I learned this thing. Okay, let me see what happens if I try layering samples in, or I try, these plugins instead. Yeah. And I think it's just a way that like I can focus on something and not have to think about all the other things that are going on in the world.
Yeah, it helps. Really interesting. So that got us to sort of 2017, I think. And then what happened then?
Started playing guitar again. I remember I got a job working from home, and I was just like, I was kind of bored at work one day because I didn't happen to have any projects that day. So I just like pulled my guitar out of the closet, and I was like, oh, I need an amp, because I just had like an electric. I had a Tele at the time. It was an American Special. And so I didn't have an amp, and I was like, okay, well, I need an amp. And there's like this little used guitar shop that was like right down the street from me. So I went there and I bought like this PV Classic 30. And then I plugged it in, and I was like, yeah, I forgot what it was like to play music. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Turn the gain all the way up and start playing some like, oh yeah, it's fun to play chug power chords.
And I can still do it. I bet it was just the muscle memory just came back straight away.
A little bit, yeah. But it was more like, what do I play? Like, I don't even remember what to play anymore, because I was never somebody that like learned a whole lot of cover songs or stuff. Like I was always writing my own things. So yeah, there's definitely a period of like, now what?
Yeah.
And then I just was like, you know what? I want to get back in a band. I don't know. I can't remember like when I thought that, or like if there was anything that, oh, actually, no, I take that back. My wife and I, we went to, it was like a local podcast showcase show that was like part improv comedy. They had a band playing. The band that played there just happened to be Coastlands.
Right.
Yeah, it's pretty rad. And it was this like tiny little upstairs, like almost like a speakeasy vibe to this bar. And we saw them play. And of course, one of their guitarists had his 5150 stack, which is the rig that I used back in the day. And it was just like loud, energetic. And I was like, I remember I used to do that and it was amazing. So I'm going to do that again.
Awesome.
And then that's when I started looking on Craigslist for bands. I ended up connecting with the drummer for Elsia. He had put out an ad he had a solo project called Mischievous Giants. And so he put out an ad for getting that project going. And yeah, that's really when I got back into things. And that's when you can see like when I discovered reverb, and it went from like, oh, I'll buy this line 6 M6 pedal. And then from there, it was like just this giant long list of like everything I could possibly need. Because at that point, like I didn't have any gear at all. I had the Telecaster and I had.
So it's almost like starting from scratch.
Yeah, it was.
Which is cool, actually. Sort of starting from scratch, a bit wiser as well.
It took me a good 3 years to finally understand what works for me. Cause like I tried all the things that the cool post-rock kids are doing with like a Fender amp and a giant pedal board. And
me.
It doesn't work for me. Like, I don't know. I just like, I don't like tap dancing.
Yeah.
I trip and I fall.
Well, and I've done some videos on that already. I'm looking at my board now. It's got like 7 or 8 pedals on it and it's in total disarray. I used to be the guy that needed the like OCD. Can't see any cables. The pedals have got to be like within half an inch of each other. It's got to be, I even used to stand back and like, all these pedals perfectly straight and square up. I don't know. That one's slightly off. And I don't think I ever used a spirit level, but that's sort of, it did get me for about 6 months back there for a while ago, a long time.
Yeah, well, I've been there. And then it's like the worst thing when you get it like set up how you want it. And like, maybe like one of the cables doesn't fit, or like there's some little thing that it's like,
yeah. And then you get into soldered cables. I did that for a while, soldered cables, and I make my own cables. Yeah, it was a nice process. It felt good. And then you bought a new pedal and realized that you didn't have any cable left, and the cables you made were custom made to the pedal board as it was. And now the pedal board's changed. And will this ever end? No, it won't. Okay, cool. Well, this is a train I need to get off because this is madness. Let's zoom further forward then to to today. Where's most of your sort of musical time invested in today?
So basically this band Elsia, we recorded the first album that we had somebody else like mix it. We kind of recorded it on our own and sent it off to a mixer. So when we did the second album, we had the lineup change and it was down to just 3 people. And I was like, you know what? I could probably mix this. Like I was just being stupid. That's kind of like how I approach things. I'm like, I could probably do this.
Yeah.
I'll commit to it.
Yeah.
Right. I'll learn how to do it.
Yeah.
So I did. And that's how that kind of started my journey into like Empires of Light and doing more like producing and stuff. Cause basically I was like, okay, guys, I'll do it. Now what?
And how did it go? But what was your sort of mixing production experience up to that point?
0.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Right. But I had always been good at getting guitar tones and just kind of like using my ear. Like I had at least put together some demos and had like a basic concept, at least I thought at the time, of like layering guitars and bass. It ended up being a big challenge. And then definitely when I look back at the second Elsie album, I can say, okay, it doesn't quite sound as good as what I can do now. But that's just kind of, it's just like an artifact of the journey, really. So it was after that album where like the process of writing an Elsia was like the other guitarist tended to be like he was just like a factory with ideas. He'd be like, here's this idea. And he was like, and they're really great ideas. And he would just like, he's one of those people that can like spend an hour and have like a full song. I'm more of like a think about things internally and like play a riff for like 2 weeks before I'm finally like, yeah, I'm cool with that. So I just basically wanted to, after that experience, I was like, I want to like do something that's all on my own, like where I have to like write everything.
Yeah, and I think there's also something nice around not having anyone else's expectations or pressures on you when you want as well. Fit it into your own time frame, and which sometimes is a good thing, sometimes not.
Yeah.
But dynamics are just totally different, aren't they? What would your creative process be? Where would you start, and how would you transition through to a song, fully fleshed out idea?
A good question. One of the ways I typically start stuff is I just spend a lot of time just playing without like any expectation of recording anything. Somehow like a riff or something will just, I'll be noodling and it'll stick and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I'll keep playing it and I'll try to work on it. I found that like if I do something for a few days or a couple of weeks and I keep coming back to it, that means it's probably something that's worth finishing. Like it's getting stuck in my head, so it'll potentially get stuck in other people's heads.
Are you almost, I need to want to play this again and like when I'm sitting on my sofa watching TV, I like the sound of what I was playing an hour ago. And that means therefore I need to continue with it. Or is there a different reason why you do that?
No, I think that's a pretty good description. So like my day job is a product designer for software, and an important part of that role is being able to design something, get feedback, and iterate on it. And just like, it's not just like, here's the first thing that comes out, we're going to ship it off to customers. That I think is more of my preferred approach to music as well. I typically try to start wide and get like a basic arrangement of a song, usually with rhythm guitars, like clean and distorted guitars. Like to me, like once I have that arrangement of start to finish, that's when I can start like hearing more things and layers. Whereas a lot of people I see kind of go more like chunk by chunk, like they'll be like guitar, leads, synth, drums, bass for this section, and then same thing for the next section. Where I'm more like layers.
Yeah, interesting.
And I'll often like as I'm going through that process, I'll just bounce whatever I have to to an MP3, and I'll listen to it like when I'm taking my dog for a walk or something. And so I can listen to it and be like, okay, I think it needs something here, or like this part, these two parts sounded good together when I was first writing it, but now that I'm listening back to it, I'm like, they're kind of conflicting or something like that.
Do you work on all that first before you put any drums down or bass down or anything like that?
So I've kind of I used to do it that way. Now the past few years I've gotten kind of ruined by, we have a really fantastic drummer in Elsia, and he can just he's got an electronic drum kit at home. He can just bang out drums for a song very quickly, and it's always like super high quality. Now I kind of have to have some type of drum element when I'm composing stuff. So I use addictive. Is it addictive or addicting? I can never remember. Addictive drums, just because it has a whole library of different drum beats. Drum sounds are not that great. Whatever. But it's great for writing. And so like I can just be like, okay, this part needs like a sloshy, heavy 4/4 beat. I can go find that and drag it in. I always save bass for after I've gotten final drums, just because I want bass to like be really locked in with drums.
When you're in that sort of Empires are like mindset, what are the benefits and what do you see as the bits you maybe struggle with a bit more?
Yeah, good question. The thing about like I almost see EOL as like a respite from my day job. And my day job's great. I enjoy it. Typical day-to-day work is propose an idea or come up with an idea, propose an idea, get a bunch of feedback and opinion on it. Yes, this is cool. No, this sucks. Do that for like months on end. And then, finally it's done. And so like, it's this whole process of like having to come up with an idea and get everybody else's opinion on it. Sometimes I just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to like have something that's mine.
Yep.
That hopefully people like it, but at the end of the day, it's like if I want to take this certain approach, I can do it. If I want to have like a metal breakdown in the middle of a bossa nova beat or something, like I can do that, and it's up to me. It's nice to be able to do it like at my own pace, at my own pressure, and not have to worry about expectations of anybody else.
What would you say the downsides are then to doing something on your own?
Well, I mean, I'm limited to just me and my opinion. And I feel like it's easier for me. Maybe this is just my personality, but like I often put myself on the back burner when other things come up. Whereas if I've committed to something with a band, I'll often put more energy to that, or like feel I'm more obligated to that than I am to my own thing. It is quicker from idea to completion doing it on my own, but it is longer sometimes in between those ideas. In the same amount of time that Elsia did a full album and an EP and started work on an additional album, Empires of Light did six songs. The other thing I think is really cool about solo thing is like you can really spend a lot of time on the craft aspect of it. Whereas like, at least I feel like in a band, you've often got people that are like, okay, come on, we need to go. We need to like get this out the door. We need to go. For me, part of what makes the process fun is being able to experiment on things and try different things. And like, maybe I've remixed this song 5 different times. Maybe the 5th version is 20% better than the original version, but I learned a whole bunch of stuff in that whole time.
All this stuff that you've talked about, it takes quite a lot of time playing around with your guitar, making up songs, progressing them, advancing them, going for a walk with the dog, listening to your music, almost editing yourself, recording, mixing, thinking about concepts and artwork and titles and all that sort of stuff, let alone sort of try and make anyone in the world aware that you exist and that might want to listen to this sort of stuff. Why do you do all that?
I don't know. I can't really explain it. It's more like, why not? Something just kind of motivating, I guess. I've always tried to understand like the why behind it. And I can't really think of like a reason other than I just have like this kind of undefinable drive to like do it.
What makes you walk through that door and do it again the next day after you've had a not so good time doing it the day before, maybe?
I don't have shit else to do. No, I'm kidding. Like I said, it's kind of this undescribable attraction to picking up a guitar, playing it, and then knowing that I can record something. And then I guess that's that feeling of like when you hear the thing come together for the first time, or like when, you know, as you're going through different phases, like when you first like nail that riff perfectly and then you double track it and you're like, oh, that sounds really good. And then, you know, or like when you mix the drums and you're like, oh damn, this is good. Seeing like the stages of like something get improved and just start to come together. I think that's where the reward is. What
do you think is the hardest part about being an independent artist?
That's a good question. Because like on the positive side, like the barrier to entry has never been so low. Like the stuff that I'm making on my own for, you know, a few $100 in gear that I've invested. Well, I should say the few $100 in gear that I still have that is currently plugged in, that it's actually required to make the thing.
Yeah.
is like 1,000 times better than the album that we spent $10,000 on 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Like, that's amazing. And like anybody can get on Spotify or streaming for like what, $40 or something. Like there was a time when you had to get a record label for anybody to hear you, or you had to spend a bunch of your own money. One of those two things.
Yeah.
So I think that the downside to that is that as a solo artist who doesn't already have recognition, you're basically just shouting in a sea of other voices. And, you know, how like, I don't know, 15 years ago, how many heavy metal-ish post-metal instrumental bands were there? Probably a handful. Now there's thousands. Like, you know, every day I'm seeing like some new band from Hungary or I don't know, something like that. So it's just like it's hard to like have any type of original, I did something new voice these days. And so I think that's kind of a challenge to accept that and just be okay with it and just be like, yeah, I know that I'm just I'm shouting my voice along with the cacophony of a billion other voices, and that's okay.
Gear, favorite gear, go-to gear. What would be yours?
Oh man. Well, I think
we need a whole series just on your guitars, don't we? I think
like the backbone of everything is this 1998 Music Man Stingray. It's kind of ridiculous how cheap that I got it for, like before the pandemic. I want to say I got it on Reverb. It was listed for like $900, but when it came, I don't know, it's probably, you can't really see it, but
Yeah.
It was shipped in like the middle of a snowstorm
Right.
in the Midwest of America. And it went through the snowstorm. It was like ridiculously cold. And then when I had it shipped to my office, and I let it sit at room temperature for like a good few hours, but I guess it wasn't long enough. So like as soon as I opened it, the finish started getting all these cracks through it. So I was able to like, I was able to contact the seller and be like, yo, this thing came cracked. Like, can I get a discount on it? And he was like, yeah, we'll just blame it on UPS and file a claim. So it was like
Oh, wow.
$700 for like an American made Stingray, which is a lot more than that now. And it's like, it kind of
Yeah.
has this uh, um, relic vibe to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks
This
awesome.
one, of all the things that I have, this is the one I will never, ever sell because it would be just crazy expensive to get another one.
And what's going on, just quickly before you put it down, what's going on with the different dials you've got there? Why have you got, what's the 4 dials? What are they doing?
I don't know. Just um,
One's volume.
from what I understand, it's an active preamp, and it's volume here, treble, middle, bass,
Okay.
and if it's there's like a little groove in the middle, and if it's above the groove, then it's boost, and if it's below the groove, it's a cut. So I
Very
usually have
cool.
the volume all the way up, bass and mid mostly up, and then thing about Stingrays is they have enough treble that they can like
Right. Yeah.
explode your head. Like
Yeah.
they will slice your ears off with treble, so you have to dial it
Cool.
back a little bit.
Cool. Interest, is the bass nearest to you, or why did you pick up a bass first?
Um, just because of all the guitars I have, it's the one that I've had the longest and the one that is the oldest. And I don't know, just kind of has, I don't know, it just has this feel when you pick it up. It's just
Yeah.
hard to explain.
And now it feels like you, like you, I suppose it feels part of you to a degree.
Yeah. Then I have this guy, which was like my first Music Man guitar. It's a 2010 Albert Lee.
Yeah.
But I had a
That's
custom
wild.
paint job.
Yeah.
It was black.
Right.
It's like straight black. And then the original owner put 2 Seymour Duncan pearly gates in there. And I didn't like the pearly gates bridge pickup, so I replaced it. I meant to get a Seymour Duncan custom SH5, and I accidentally ordered the Seymour Duncan custom 5. I don't know why they have those 2 pickups, but so I accidentally ordered it, and I was like, what the hell? I'll put it in. And it shreds. I love it. So it's and then I had to replace the volume pot myself. So it's kind of like been customized a lot.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's a one of a kind.
Yeah.
You know, I'll never be able to find anything like this anywhere else. So this one's definitely
Awesome.
a keeper.
Show me the get the Dunnable out.
Yeah. So this is a Dunnable. It was a self birthday present, and I've got it in drop B at the moment.
They just,
that's kind of.
I was looking at them the other day on the website. Can you just lift the body up a little bit so I can see the? Yeah, they just. I don't know how to word it. They just look, to me, they're just kind of like the perfect combination of style, but they just look like a slab of wood as well. It looks hench, but it also looks quite stylishly done.
The way I look at it is, it's like what a Gibson should be. And like, I'm not a fan of Gibsons at all, but this does the Gibson vibe very well. It's like, it's got the stop tailpiece. It kind of has like the same type of body shape as like a slightly bigger SG. Same type of headstock. Let's not talk about the logo though. The logo type is not good. But the scale is 25.5. So it doesn't have that like weird short scaleness of a Gibson.
Yeah. So as an artist, when you're creating music to release, are there any visual guides or prompts that you use whilst you're writing, or is that all stuff that you do when you've finished to make it look cool or to fit a certain aesthetic?
That's a good question. And it's funny. It's funny that you say that it doesn't look like I spend 10 minutes on it, because I do kind of only spend a few minutes on it.
Oh, really?
So like my I never had like formal training as a graphic designer. That like I got into like graphic design and then web design and then software design, like kind of by accident, and learned Photoshop and Illustrator on my own. But basically like the artwork that you see with EOL is like, I'm like a one trick pony designer and like, that's what I know how to do. So like at this point I can just kind of like, I can just be like, okay, let me get some, you know, cool different type of photos that I can layer together. I know what kind of typography I like. I know what kind of color treatments I like. So I'll just put that together.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my thought process. And I'm sorry that it's not like something
it
more
works.
interesting.
Well, it works.
It's like, I was actually thinking the other day how like, I wish I could have like, I totally beat myself up and put myself through the ringer as far as like the music aspect. But for the art aspect, I'm like, yeah, I'll just try this. I'll just try this. Okay, cool. This is done. I like it. Let's go.
Almost the opposite workflow of what you do with your music, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So like the first song that I released, Riff, I started writing that song like right when the pandemic first started. And like I was really missing traveling. And a few years ago, my wife and I went to Iceland, and there's a lighthouse on the west coast of Iceland, northwest coast, called Riff. I don't know how it's pronounced in Icelandic, but
just like that, we'll say. Just like how you said it.
Yeah. And so like for the artwork for that single, it was pretty easy. Like we had actually been to Iceland and I had some really great photos of that lighthouse. So I based it around some of those photos and did some layering to it, and that worked out pretty well. Unfortunately, I've kind of used all of the good photos that I have from my photography career, kind of used that whole library. So now I have to pick other things. But
so final question for me, and I guess music in general, Josh, like, you know, that everything we've talked about, the process of creating, writing, mixing, releasing, etc. What does success look like for you?
That's a good question. I mean, the reality is I have a day job. Like, I'm not going to be a professional musician. I don't want to be a professional musician. For me, making money off of it means I have to do things for other people. Like, I have to do things a certain way to continue to make money off of it. I have to continue to make the same type of music, or like continue to make something that other people like, so that they'll buy it. I have no interest in that. So I guess success to me is just creating and producing something that I'm still happy to go back and listen to years later. And then I can say like, dang, this is a good song. Like I can listen to it and I can get the stank face and be like, yeah, yep. Oh, here's the breakdown, you know? That's, I don't know, as boring as that may be, I think that's my definition of success these days.
Thanks for watching. All of the links to Empires of Light's releases so far are down in the comments. If you want to see any of the other Meet the Musician episodes in this series, then I'll link some here. And of course, if you would do me the pleasure of subscribing and hitting that bell for notifications, then I'd love to see you here back on the channel in future. Thank you for watching.